Hi everybody, thanks for hanging out in the kitchen with me today. We're going to be making a seared pork tenderloin with a roasted tomatillo salsa. Now, I made a tomatillo salsa with you last week. It was a very simple one that is made with raw tomatillos. This is going to be roasted tomatillos. I've just finished peeling all of the little papery husks off of the tomatillos, and now I'm going to slice them in half along the horizon here. But before I actually get all that done, let's take a large poblano and put it over the flame here so that we can start that roasting process. So I'm going to cut these across their, what I call the equator. If you're thinking like a bagel, the way you would cut a bagel, that will make them easy to roast. And I am actually going to roast these in a skillet. Now, lots and lots of recipes. Tomatillos are definitely my favorite Mexican ingredient because no other cuisine in the world uses them. So I rely on them a lot when I want really classic, really traditional Mexican flavor. So I've had a lot of different ways of working with them. A lot of people in Mexico will boil them. I don't like boiled tomatillos very much. I think it really emphasizes their vegetal flavor. And that's actually what I'm trying to decrease when I'm cooking. They have a lot of tanginess to them. And I like to balance that tanginess with sweetness, and the sweetness comes from the roasting. So when I really want to work quickly, like I'm doing in these kitchen hangouts with all of you, I will slice them across the equator like that and lay them into a pan. And I've got a couple of serrano chilies that I'm going to put in here too. I'm just going to pull the stems off of those and then cut them in half lengthwise. This will speed along their cooking as well. Now, with most of the recipes you see me write about roasting tomatillos, I won't have been telling you to do this. This is only through my sort of hurry up cooking. Instead, I will tell you to put these onto a baking sheet. And when you have them on the baking sheet, a rimmed baking sheet, not a cookie sheet, but a rimmed baking sheet, you'll want to slide them up under the broiler. Now, I use my toaster oven in my house a lot for this kind of thing because it heats up really fast, and at the same time, it can get this job done quickly because the elements are a little bit closer to the tomatillos than in my regular oven. So I can roast them under a broiler, the broiler setting on my little countertop toaster oven, and it'll take me about 5 minutes or so. It may take you 6 or 7 minutes when you're doing it under the broiler of your oven. So you notice here, we've got these guys started over here doing their roasting process, and I'm gonna get that up on the highest heat that we can get here. I've also got this one on the highest heat that I can get. And I'm starting to blacken and blister the skins here. Now, you might wonder why we do all of this roasting in the traditional Mexican kitchen. And it's all about flavor. In fact, when you watch traditional cooks, especially in southern Mexico and out in the Yucatan Peninsula, they'll all have their kitchens set up with a large comal. That comal or griddle may be made out of clay, especially if you're in Oaxaca, or it may be made out of a type of rolled steel. And the comal is an amazing piece of kitchen equipment, but we just don't really have them in our kitchens in the United States. So here's where I would rely on something like a large skillet, especially one that's really heavy, because it will sort of replicate the classic Mexican comal. So when you're roasting, like say in Oaxaca, if you're gonna make a roasted tomatillo salsa, you're probably gonna take the tomatillos and just throw them right on the comal. I've translated that into something that's easier for most people in the United States, which is to get direct heat from a broiler or a little countertop oven. So let's look at this guy over here. You can see how it's nicely charred all around like that. By the way, if you're not working on gas, if you're working with an electric cooktop, then in the comments when I did this the last time, lots of people said, just heat up a pan and lay it on there. I don't find that to be very useful because you need really strong direct heat that can touch every part of it. So I would suggest that you heat your broiler, just like I was talking about with roasting tomatillos. Heat your broiler and put your poblano up underneath that broiler, and you'll get that really intense heat that will blacken and blister the skin, pretty similar to this. It'll take just a little bit longer. So now let's look and see if we've gotten this one evenly blistered all over. I think that it's gonna do really well. It's pretty much all evenly blistered. That's all that we can hope for. All of the poblanos, as I pointed out the last time, have this little indentation at the top, and that's a part that you'll never be able to get very roasted at all. Okay, so this guy now we're gonna put over to the side and let cool down until it's handleable. Let's take a look at these tomatillos so we can see about how they're roasting. So I've got some little black going on here, and that's okay. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm gonna start flipping these guys over now. They're actually looking really nicely roasted. Now some of you may not be used to this kind of dry heat roasting that's used so much to create depth of flavor and sweetness in the traditional Mexican kitchen, especially the traditional Mexican kitchen from the southern part of Mexico. You might not feel comfortable with this at all, and because it looks like you're just burning things, but you're not. You're creating depth of flavor and a beautiful sweetness in the tomatillos to sort of counteract their natural sweetness. I mean, their natural acidity. Okay, so these are looking really good. They're coming along really well. And while they roast the other side, let's talk about the pork. You know, I'm gonna move. I'm hearing a little clicking going on here from this pan. I'm gonna move this guy over here because I wanna use that to cook my pork with. So I'm gonna turn that one off and turn this guy back on now. And get this pan hot over here. But let's talk about the pork now. So I've done this since I'm quick cooking. I'm gonna use something that cooks really quickly, and that for me, if in the pork world, would be pork tenderloin. It'll be the one that cooks the fastest. So when you buy a pork tenderloin, sometimes they get really big. This one is about 1 pound, but you can get them all the way up to 1.25 pounds. And 1.25 pounds would be a nice portion for 4 people, but this one is right at about 1 pound. So let's say maybe this would be enough for 3 people. You could push it to 4, but it would be a smaller portion. When you buy it and you take it out of whatever wrapping it has come in, you want to see if there's any silver skin in here. Now I'm going to flip it over to the other side, and you see that this is all fat. I'm going to leave the fat because it will render during the cooking. But this is called silver skin. And right here you can see that it looks different than the pieces of fat. This part is silver skin, and it's quite tough. So I always want to get rid of it, so I'll just run a knife underneath it like that, and then take that off so that we've got a really clean pork tenderloin. But in order to cook this in the right amount of time for this kitchen hangout, I'm actually going to butterfly it. So I'm going to go halfway down, and I'm going to use my knife to cut along like that so that I can make it into one piece that is thinner, like that. See how that just lays open flat, but everything is exactly the same thickness. I'm going to put some salt on this. This is one of the things that is really important to learn. Meat wants salt. Okay, and I always suggest that you salt it. Maybe some of you have gotten into brining chicken and realize just how incredibly delicious brined chicken can be. partly because of the moisture, but also because of the seasoning that's gone all the way through. So I've put some salt on there. Let's take a look over here at these guys. Oh, look, you can see that they are starting to sort of bubble. That indicates that they're all cooked. They've lost that really bright green color and have turned more of the olive green. We'll come back to that in just a second. And I'm gonna put here my mortar and a little bit of pepper into it and crush it, because I love fresh ground pepper. I think it's got such an incredible flavor, and crushing it in a mortar like this just takes seconds. I've never found a pepper grinder that can do it as fast as this can, so I use this method for doing a lot of my crushing of black pepper here. And then I'm gonna sprinkle some of this pepper over this side of it, flip it over, and then do the other side. Smear all that pepper over the top of it like that. Okay, so that's ready now to go into this pan. I've got the pan hot, and we're gonna talk about cooking mediums, because I'm gonna use something different. Up to this point, I've been cooking mostly in olive oil, but today I'm gonna cook in high heat rendered pork lard. Now, before you just bail and say, oh, I would never do that at all, hear me out, because this stuff, this high heat rendered pork lard, is some of the best stuff that you could ever use to cook with. Now, most people think, oh, but it's just laden with cholesterol and saturated fat and all that. This stuff has half the cholesterol, half the saturated fat of butter. And we don't say that about butter. So I'm saying give lard a chance, because it can absolutely enrich the flavors of a dish in a way that neither butter nor olive oil can do. So I'm gonna put a spoonful of it into this pan here, where I'm gonna cook the seasoned butterfly pork tenderloin. I just need enough to cover the bottom of the pan. And one thing that you will notice here is that the look, and maybe that doesn't interest you all that much, but the look of the seared pork tenderloin when it is cooked in pork lard is amazing. Okay, so that's gonna go in there, and we're gonna let that cook as we finish up the sauce now. So we'll take this skillet over to the blender jar here, and I'm gonna put all of these roasted tomatillo halves in here, along with the roasted serrano chilies. And then we're gonna make a smooth puree out of that. But before we go to the pureeing part of all of that, I'm gonna take a little bit more of this pork lard, put it in here, because we're gonna cook our sauce base down in this. Don't worry about the little dark bits there. It will actually enhance the flavor. And I think the look of this sauce, we'll put this one on medium high now. And while we're getting rid of all of this, we'll get the onion and the garlic ready for the base of that sauce. So I've got the equivalent of a small onion. It's half of a medium onion here. And I'm going to slice it very thinly. And the reason that I'm slicing it thinly is because I want it to brown quickly and add more sweetness to balance the natural acidity of the tomatillos. So when I get to the end, I just drop the piece over there. Now let's go over into the skillet. Nice. And while those are starting to brown there, I'm going to work with the garlic here. This is going to get minced, so I'm going to use the mashing technique for the garlic and press it firmly so it crushes the clove and releases the papery skin. And then I will use my slicing technique first, and then the rocking and chopping. So there's our garlic. First, slice it across, one piece of skin there. Slice it across, and then do the rocking and chopping back and forth until we have it minced. Okay. I like the garlic to be really fine, so I do this several times back and forth. Maybe you like bigger pieces of garlic in your food, so you don't have to go quite that far with it. Now, my natural inclination when I see a pan of onions cooking like that is to do what most chefs would do to it, which is to pick up the pan and give it a little toss. So this is what we would normally do, is just to grab it like that, shake it to make sure everything is free, and then to give it a toss. So what we're doing is to use the sloped side of the pan as sort of a launching pad, and so we're throwing it up against that, and it's then moving the pan back underneath to catch it. So it's a very standard thing. I highly recommend learning how to do this. You may make a mess or two when you're really learning it, and the old Julia Child trick is really one that you could use. Hold your pan, put some dry beans in it, and toss the beans. And when you can get them to go like that in the pan, then you have mastered the motion. And so you see what I do is I'll shake them down toward the end of the pan, and then give it a toss like that. What it means is that you don't have to be looking for a utensil and coming over and doing that. You can give whatever's in the pan a quick toss and know that it has been mixed thoroughly and it's going to brown evenly. That's what I'm sort of looking for here, and we've got some nice browning going on. So at this moment, I'm going to scrape up the garlic and put that into the pan. So you can see it's a good amount of garlic in this. And see there again, I would just grab the pan and mix it by tossing everything in the pan like that. Okay, and let's go back over to the blender here. And we're going to put the top on and then blend what's in here. Now remember, I've got hot stuff in here. So the one thing you don't want is a closed container, because as it starts to blend, you will build up pressure from steam. That could throw the top right off of this. And believe me, I've learned that lesson the hard way. So in our restaurant, none of these have the tops on them, so that you can blend all the hot stuff that you want. You may want to fold your towel and put that over the top of it to catch anything that happens to shoot up. Okay, so I'm going to turn this guy on, but I guess I got to plug it in first. Okay. So this I want to go for a little while so I can get a smooth mixture here. And I'm going to turn the speed up just a little. That's beautiful. Okay. And then this mixture now will go in with the onions and the garlic. And here we are at the point where we can cook this down quickly. You notice that I'm using a big skillet. I like a lot of surface area for this. If you were to come into our restaurant kitchens, you would have the opportunity to see us working this style of cooking in really large kettles. Look at that. That is so beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to put these guys back over here and cook this down. So the reason I'm looking for a lot of space here is because it helps to cook this down quickly. And this step that's called in the Mexican kitchen the frying the sauce base, is an essential part of creating the most harmonious flavors that you could ever get. So we are searing everything together. And it is pretty remarkable how different the flavor will be by including this step in the production of this sauce. Okay, so we're getting it almost to that consistency now of like tomato paste here. And then I'm going to add to it a little bit of chicken broth. You can use pork broth if you happen to have made a pork stew and have some broth left. You could use vegetable stock. You could use water. And when I say to use water, I'm not saying that it is a lesser ingredient. It actually, using water for this will allow the tomatillo flavor to be clearer and brighter and cleaner. But lots of people like to make this a little richer in flavor. So I have some chicken broth over here that I'm going to pour into the skillet, because I've now got it cooked down so you can see the bottom of the pot, because it's thick like tomato paste would be. So I'm going to stir in this broth. And if you want it to be really rich, put in the full cup of the broth and let it simmer for a while until it's the perfect thickness. I'm just going to add the right amount for perfect thickness now, because I don't have a lot of time to let it simmer. The sauce is basically ready now. We just have to add the seasoning, 2 seasonings. One is going to be salt, so I'm just going to give it what I would call my initial seasoning of salt. The second is this herb. Now, this is epazote. I don't know how many of you know it or are used to working with it, but man, this stuff in a roasted tomatillo sauce is spectacular. So I'm going to take some leaves of it. It's available in most Mexican grocery stores. If you live in a community that has a lot of Mexican inhabitants and you have a lot of Mexican grocery stores, you for sure will be able to find the epazote. Lots of people would take the whole branch of epazote and put it into the sauce and then pull it out at the end. You can easily do that. It's certainly an easy way to do it. But since we're not going to simmer this very long, I'm taking the leaves and I'm going to put those guys just straight in there, and then we're going to add more chili flavor. Remember, we have a little bit of serrano flavor in there, but I'm going to pull the dark skin, the blackened skin off of the poblano that we roasted earlier, and put that. This is a bowl of water. I would normally be doing this at the kitchen sink, but I didn't want to turn my back on you folks, so I just got a bowl of water here so that I could do that. Then once you've gotten the blackened skin off, then just tear it open like that. And pull the seed pod out. And then my standard method here is to give it a brief rinse to get all of the stray seeds off of it. Bits of skin that I didn't pull off before. And then I'm ready to now chop this into smaller pieces. Now, I feel like this is done now, so I'm turning it off. I'm going to let it just sit here in the pan for a minute. Actually, I may not let it sit in the pan. Let me just double check the doneness on it. So I'm looking for it. You know, this little trick or technique, I don't know if you guys have heard this, but this muscle right here, if you held a really stiff fist, if you press this muscle, I've got little bits and pieces of that black skin all over my finger, but if you press that when you're doing a tight fist, that's well done. If you release it completely, that's rare, or raw, that's raw. And so then just moving it a little bit of a fist, you can see that it's got more tone, and that would be your sort of medium. That's what I'm going for here, and that's what I'm feeling when I touch this. So I'm going to pull this thing off. It's so beautifully seared in this pan now. And lay that just right there so it can kind of start to cool down while I am going through the cutting of the poblano here. So I'm going to cut it like that, and then I'm going to cut crosswise into smaller strips. And I'm just using a rocking and chopping here until I get to the real meat of this thing, and then I can do the slicing part of it. Now, this is one thing that a lot of people who haven't really mastered some of their knife skills will not do right. So a lot of times people think to use their knife as a hatchet going straight down. That's not the way knives are intended to be used. They're intended to be used as a sawing motion. So now that I've gotten to the thickest part of this, I'm gonna cut through it like that. That's really, really good knife skills. And you can leave the tip down as I'm doing now, or you can pick it up and then move it straight through. Okay, now we got all of this beautiful poblano here to scoop up into the sauce. So the interesting thing about cooking live like this and cooking at a very, what I would call moderate pace. Yes, I'm cooking some things that are more complex sometimes, but I'm showing you the simplest way to get through it. Is that I have the opportunity to talk to you about all different kinds of techniques. And I can show you things that have come from many, many years of working in a restaurant kitchen, and then many things that have come from many years of cooking with families in Mexico and learning the real traditional way to create the flavor. And so often, when you don't spend the time doing that, and I don't have the time to share all of that, it goes without saying. So I hope that you're enjoying this part of cooking live with me, because it really does give me the opportunity to do a whole lot of different things than I'm able to do on Mexico One Plate at a Time or any of our YouTube videos. Okay, so now we're ready to go ahead and make this dish, so or present this dish, I should say. So I'm going to clean the board here. I'm going to use a few of those leaves of epazote for garnish. Put this right here, a nice large spoon. I think I should taste this first, so let me grab a tasting spoon and see if I got enough salt in it. It's nice and spicy. Gonna go really well with the seared pork. And I just, right before we started, since I'm at the restaurant, but above the restaurant, I went downstairs and I said, why don't I just take a little bit of these beautiful beans, because I think it's beans and tomatillo sauce are incredible. These are black beans that are still pretty whole but mashed. They're cooked with onion. First we saute onion, and then we take our boiled black beans, and we saute the onions in pork lard, the same pork lard that I showed you here that comes from one of our local farmers, our pig farmer. We just sort of mash them in there, but we don't mash them very much. So let's put that on the side of the plate here. That flavor of those black beans is really, really delicious. Our sauce has thickened up just a touch, so I'm going to add a little bit more broth to it. So we'll spoon that onto the plate. You see those onions and the roasted poblano, roasted tomatillos and serrano chilies, all of that really beautifully presented here. Now I'm going to slice this guy here. So let's see what this is going to look like. I'm going to hold it with my tongs as I start to do a slice like that. So this is the temperature that I'm looking for. If you want pork that tastes really succulent, it should be pink on the inside. That means that it has gotten to about 150 degrees. That's the temperature that now they say we can cook our pork to, because all of the health concerns before are things of the past. So I'm cutting this now on a diagonal, so that I can shingle it out. You get that beautiful peppery crust on this, and you will see that that black pepper goes beautifully with the flavor of the of the green chili in here. So I'm going to lay these pieces just like that, until we've filled the plate. I think I'll do this one right here. Got a couple pieces left here. Open this up and take a couple of leaves of epazote and lay them beautifully around all of this. So I would probably just let them fall in different places here. And then we have our quick to prepare pork tenderloin with a roasted tomatillo and green chili sauce, little black beans on the side. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, this hanging out in the kitchen with me. I'll see you guys again tomorrow.